Hello, hello.
Oh,
Hey there. I'm just going to try and see what I can do with him.
oh no, he just needs to be incognito.
Yes, I'm trying to make him incognito.
Oh, I see. So we're trying to make it incognito.
There we go. So, what's going on?
I'm gonna mute.
Okay. Well, I thought I'd opened this, but I'm not seeing people come in.
I'm unmuting. I can see 28 participants.
Can you?
Yep.
I can't see any of that. Oh, yes, sorry. I've got you now. Okay, well, good afternoon. As you're coming in, I'm just going to sit here and be quiet until you've all amassed, but slowly but surely, people are coming through the door. And we'll get cracking in a moment or two.
It's approaching 2 minutes past 4. Shall we begin an introduction?
Absolutely, yeah. Let's get started. We've given people a couple of minutes to turn up. Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Study in the Netherlands webinar. My name is Mark Huntington. I am the director of A Star Future, and Naomi, who's with us from the University of Groningen. This afternoon, we're going to hopefully give you a little bit more of an idea as to what it's going to mean to study in Holland, specifically in 2021, which will hopefully be very, very different from 2020. So we're going to give a couple of very, very quick presentations, and then we're going to throw open the majority of this session to a question and answer. How we would like to deal with the Q&A is we'd very much like you to use the chat function if you can, because that way both Naomi and I can see what you are writing, and you can also, if you send it to all participants, see whether your question has already been asked. We already know we're going to get loads and loads of questions about like entry requirements and stuff like that. We're going to address that, but if it's already been addressed for your particular subject, it's helpful if you kind of just wait for that to happen. But anyway, without further ado, I'm going to load up my presentation and then we will get cracking. So, yes. So, hopefully you're all now seeing my presentation and just my presentation. Right. Okay, studying in the Netherlands in English. I mean, why is this something that we've asked you along to talk about today? Well, essentially because it's a country that, well, has a lot going for it in terms of proximity, but also in terms of provision of education in English. So, you know, the chances are if you're looking for options outside the United Kingdom, and you're looking at European options and you only speak English or you want to study in English, you're going to end up looking at the Netherlands, primarily because it's a good place to go and live. You know, there's no point trying to encourage you to go somewhere that we know students have been miserable. Many students go there, love it, and really do see it as being a very, very different experience from what they get here in the UK. Karen is an example of a student who kind of really felt she came out of a shell after she left the country. Aideen is slightly different in the sense that she's talking about this from the perspective of being able to embrace all sorts of different cultures, because the Netherlands is a very tolerant, open society, all sorts of different cultures there that you can learn from and mix with. But another thing you have to bear in mind if you are going to go to a Dutch university, just to give you the flip side, which is a benefit and potentially a weakness, is that it's very, very different from going to a British university. You have to be aware that you are letting yourself in for something slightly different. Joey here, you're going to hear more about Joey in a moment, but I put him up this early because he very neatly puts his finger on an issue that Naomi and I are going to address repeatedly. And this is about the fact that when you go to a Dutch university, you're going there to study, and you're going there to study straight away. This is one of the biggest differences we find with the UK, where the whole Freshers Week and the whole take it easy for a few months before you do any serious work, that culture is missing in the Netherlands. So don't expect it to be exactly the same in terms of the workload that you get. But another great thing about the Dutch universities, I'm just going to focus on this one slide here, is that when you start shopping around, if you like, in the whole of Europe, looking for opportunities at good research universities, so Russell Group equivalent, if you like, that are actually taught in English, very quickly you come to the realization that I would say roughly 75% of the good opportunities are actually at Dutch universities. These are, on this slide, some of the top 50 European universities. Now, so we go down to 49th place there, now a global rank of 153rd. But the reason why we've only got these 20 or so up on the screen is because these are the ones that actually teach anything in English. And when you look at where there are many, many options, so all of the options I think in double figures on this slide, except one, are Dutch universities. And only one of them has got more than 30 degrees. That, of course, is the University of Groningen, which is why, of course, Naomi is here on this session today, because for the vast majority of you, having looked at the things that you are interested in, not all of you, but the vast majority of you are going to find something suitable at the University of Groningen. There is also another side to Dutch higher education I do just briefly want to mention as well, and that is that while they have some excellent research universities, they also have excellent universities of applied sciences. The Dutch system has something for everybody, but some people are more academic and some people are more vocationally minded. So how do you choose whether you're going to go to a University of Applied Science or a research university? Because you might think, well, obviously, I want to go to the best university I possibly can. Now, research universities, well, the choice of which university you're going to make or go to is largely going to be made by the subject you wish to study when you get there. Academic subjects like philosophy, medicine, biology, international relations, and so on, you're only going to find those in research universities. But for those of you looking for subjects like graphic design, fine art, computer game design, physiotherapy, music, and so on, those will only be found in universities of applied sciences. So actually, the subject you want to study is going to lead you in one direction or another. Occasionally, the same subject is offered in both. This is actually quite rare, but it does happen in business and engineering and so on. But there, the approach they take is very, very different. Research university is going to be much more theoretical, much more higher level maths and physics in the case of engineering than a University of Applied Science, which might focus more on sort of project management and practical skills. As I'm saying, there's absolutely nothing wrong with either of those things. It's a question of finding what's right for you. And in both cases, the Dutch have got something I think that would be hugely beneficial. Another way in which your choice of university might be made for you as well, though, is regarding entry requirements and what you're doing at school here in the UK. For a research university, you need A-levels. You need 3 A-levels. Occasionally, you might need certain subjects. Maths and sciences will require certain A-levels. If you have a BTEC, particularly if you have a BTEC, well, if you have a BTEC level 3 extended diploma, you can apply to universities of applied sciences. If you have regular certificates or diplomas, things get quite difficult. So, feel free to ask any questions about that, about your individual circumstances. So anyway, that was just a quick introduction from my side. All of these details, all of this information will be made available to you afterwards. So don't feel you need to necessarily, come back, take everything down right now. But what I'd like to do now is I'd just like to invite Naomi to speak while she's setting herself up. I am just loading her presentation, which hopefully you can see. And over to you, Naomi. You're muted.
Yeah, that's good. I just unmuted myself. Yeah, sorry, I just had to get up quickly because it's a beautiful summer's day here, and I had the window open in my home office, and outside people are playing basketball and actually really, really enjoying a nice summer afternoon. So I wanted to keep the sound down. So thanks everybody for joining. I see we've got about 40 participants at the moment. Can we just go back to the first slide quickly? I just want to explain what that building is. So this is the University of Groningen. We have faculties and buildings all over the city of Groningen and also in our neighbouring city, Leeuwarden. And this is sort of the main hub. This is our academy building. It's actually the third academy building that we've had because we've been a university for over 400 years. I believe the last one burnt down and this one is probably around 100 years old. But you can see it just looks very grand. It's a really nice central point of the city of Groningen. So if we just move on to the introduction, I can just quickly introduce myself. I'm Naomi Eustace. I've worked at the University of Groningen as a marketing coordinator for Europe for 3 years nearly. Before that, I also worked for a University of Applied Sciences, so the other type of higher education that you can have within the Netherlands. I've lived here actually in Groningen for over 15 years. But you may hear from my voice, I'm actually originally British and I grew up in London. So a little bit of background about the university. We are a research university, so we're the more theoretical side. We're one of, I think it's 14 in the country, 13 or 14, and all, of course, are very well ranked in the global listings. We are one of the oldest, I think the second oldest university after Leiden, established in 1614. Here's a couple of the rankings at the moment. Times Higher is what some of you may have heard of. You also may have heard of the Shanghai rankings, and you can see we're solidly in the top 100 globally. And as Mark pointed out, when you actually take out the UK and England, we go much, much, much higher up the rankings with a wide portfolio of English language taught programs. About 32,000 students, so it's a big university for the Netherlands. And 20%, we hit the 20% mark, but we may even be higher now, cover 120 different nationalities. Now, the UK is around our third or our fourth biggest nationality within the university, and we've been growing over the last 10 years with students coming in from the United Kingdom. So a very popular destination. Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just launching a video.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Mark is just going to play you a short video at which we'll have a couple of our international students give a feel for what they enjoy about living in Groningen and studying at the university.
Okay, sorry. That's showing you a different email, isn't it?
Yes, that's not.
That's not for your public consumption. Sorry, unless you want to know about medicine, and I can talk to you about that.
Oh, no. We're carrying on talking about the Netherlands, I think, at the moment.
Okay, hang on a minute. I'm just going to have to see if I have got this loaded. I know I've got it loaded. This has got to be the one.
Yep.
I really wanted to study abroad, and I saw that the Netherlands was a really nice place to come. And when looking at the different cities, I heard that Groningen was the student city in the Netherlands.
Well, I really liked the city because I thought it was really small and compact, but also it had everything you needed. So all the stores are here, and everything you need to get is also here. Everything's in biking distance as well, which I think is super convenient.
Well, it's a top 100 university, so I feel I'm getting a very good education. I really appreciate the style of teaching where you have to work together in groups with other students. And you also get to meet a whole bunch of people. It's a very international place.
Well, I really like coming here to the library to study, but sometimes I also like going around to the smaller cafes in the city and exploring different places to study as well. during the Sun Introduction Week, we got to go explore the city and make a lot of new friends, and we got to go try out the sports facility they have close to Groningen, where we tried squash and floorball and football, and those are really fun, and those are just some of the activities that we could do at the sports center that we could try out.
It's really international, it's really easy to make friends, and yeah, when I arrived here, I honestly did not expect to have so much fun.
Okay, so there's a little bit of a video, and Joey is the student I introduced you to earlier as well. So I come up with the wrong thing there.
It's okay. That's just
that's it. Sorry, it's the slide.
So we need to resume. Yeah, that's great. So we can resume the presentation.
There you go.
Well, I think Mark's already touched on a lot of this. Why study in the Netherlands? Maybe these could be in a different order. It really depends on person to person. There are financial benefits currently for EU students, and that would include UK students. We will touch on that again later, and I'm sure some of the questions will reflect that, because we have subsidised fees for EU students. Non-EU students pay equivalent around about the same amount as UK tuition fees. So once you've converted the currency, it's around about 9,000 to 10,000 pounds. A top quality education, well, we've already stressed that. That was also stressed by Joey in the video, how pleased he is with the quality of the education he gets in a top university. International networking, yeah, people from all over the world, but also business partners. We have university partners all over the world for those students that want to, or whose program includes a semester on exchange abroad. Language barrier, none, but it is good to learn Dutch, at least some, and we offer courses as well, but going about your day-to-day life, shopping, going to the market, social life outside, sports, everything is achievable in the English language. And of course, we don't expect you to be fluent in Dutch, but definitely there are opportunities to learn Dutch to different levels, which I can touch on later. Yeah, and its place in Europe, within Schengen as well, gives you access to all sorts of different cities all over Europe. So if you've got a sort of a travel bug and you'd like to do something every weekend somewhere else, it's possible. Groningen, it's the largest city in the north of the Netherlands, with about 200 inhabitants. Now, coming from London, that sounds ridiculously small, but it does have a city vibe. It's compact, there's plenty to do, and because it's compact and small, everything is very close by, safe and cycling distance. 1 in 4 of our population is students. It may even be slightly more. We estimate about 60,000 students altogether, with the University of Groningen and Hanse University of Applied Science combined. A great laid-back community, but also vibrant, plenty of things going on. City of talent, so there's always innovation projects, entrepreneur projects going on within the university and involving local businesses and national businesses as well. One of the greenest cities in the Netherlands. That's also helped very much by having 150 kilometers of bicycle lanes, and we have year-round events and festivals. I say that at the moment, like most other places in the world, these are not taking place, or they're taking place online, but hopefully by September 2021 we'll be looking at things differently. So the bachelor system in the Netherlands, you would be starting a 3-year program with a research university like ours, because we don't have a fixed internship and other components, the more practical components. It would be theoretical. 60 credits, European credits, are needed every year, and 1 credit equates to about 28 hours of studying. Now, that can be classes, that can be lecturers, teamwork, practicals, labs, depending on the program you're doing. Also library hours, so there'll be a lot of self-studying, and study begins and you start earning your credits from day 1, literally. So it's not that everything is built up until the end of the summer when you get a lot of exams. You're earning your credits from day 1. And like I mentioned, there's exchange possibilities for some programs, which I hear are very, very positive experiences for students. And the majority of our students do go on and do a master's degree, often with us, but maybe at another research university in the Netherlands or overseas. So our English Talk programs, we have 36, which is the most English Talk bachelor programs for Dutch universities. Looking way into the future, we have over 180 English Talk Masters programs. So there's plenty of opportunities for you when you complete your bachelor degree. The faculties are listed there. I think a university college has just fallen off the
It is, it's on my screen.
Yeah, okay, I can't quite see it on my screen. So within those, you cover a range of different programs. History of art, for instance, international relations in the arts faculty, behaviour and social sciences will give you psychology. Campus Friesland is a new, very relevant faculty that's doing global responsibility, a very new program. Economics and business speaks for itself, as does law, medical sciences, philosophy, science and engineering, which cover all the natural sciences, I want to stress, but also interesting things like, or very different things like astronomy. Spatial sciences is where people who generally have an interest maybe in geography would end up. Theology and religious studies and university college, some of you will be aware of that because that's the liberal arts and sciences program, which a lot of international baccalaureate students often like to go forward into. What is important, which really is a huge difference from the UK system, is the binding study advice. I can't stress enough that you need to start working hard and earning your credits from day one, because if you do not have enough credits, which in most cases is 45 out of 60 at the end of your first academic year, you will be asked to leave the program, which you will not be able to re-enroll on. It might sound, well, I only need 3/4 of my credits. How easy is that? Well, it's not always easy. You may find it hard to adjust to, you may be finding it hard to adjust to a new country. Maybe one of the modules you're doing is harder than you thought, or is very, very new to you. You may not have an immediate retake option. What I do find with UK students, in most cases, people are fine. They can meet the 45, even some go on and achieve the full 60 in a year. But you can't mess around for the first block or the first semester, because if you haven't earned those crucial credits, you won't be able to make it up in the second half. So around Christmas time, your study advisor will give you an indication of if everything's going according to plan, which is terrific, and in most cases that's happening. But if you're finding you're not achieving sufficient amount of credits, you know, you may need some additional help, or you may decide that the study program just wasn't the right choice for you, or you'd like to try something else the following year. So it looks easy to get in with regards to just requiring 3 A levels, but it's harder to stay in. And even though we're not asking for specific A level grades, we really are looking at students getting at least a C, but ideally Bs in A levels. So I think Mark often compares it to the Russell Group type level. Yeah. Fees. Big difference between EU and non-EU students. And for this year, our incoming UK students who are starting in 2020 will still be regarded as EU students in the transitional period. After that, we don't know. We really do not know what the situation will be in 2021, because negotiations are still being carried out. Maybe, although the government have said categorically it's not happening, maybe there's an additional transitional period because of all the COVID-19 situation. Maybe there isn't. But if we believe what the government is saying at the moment, there is no addition to transition. Now, what is still possible is that we agree a deal with the EU where we can remain sort of in some kind of common market like Norway or Switzerland. And in those cases, students continue to be regarded as EU students. So I can't answer those questions. So it really is a case of staying on top of the situation if the Netherlands is a country you want to apply to study in for 2021. Living expenses is the same for everybody, really. If you want to live like a king or queen, you're going to be spending a lot more money. But if you're happy to look after a budget, you're looking somewhere between, I'd say, minimum 800, but maybe just over €1,000. And the biggest part of that will be your housing. Rooms are available through short stay housing. Can I just go back?
Sorry. Yes.
Also go on the private sector as well, but housing is something that you need to be very, very aware of in early spring of the year that you'll be studying in, because we are a student city and housing fills up. Other support services, this is the same for all Dutch higher education institutes, information services, immigration help, welcoming ceremonies, study advisors, psychologists as well when you need additional help in that respect, and it's free of charge as well. And then different kinds of academic help, so thesis and work group support, but we also have careers advice and other things that can take you beyond the university experience. What I will say about welcoming ceremonies, this year we are probably going to be going mostly online, but we'll see what the case is for 2021, and hopefully it's back to a lot more physical possibilities. So the Language Centre, well, I think the most important thing is we have a really comprehensive language centre, and one service that we do offer our international students is a series of free Dutch lessons. It equates to about 100 hours and will take you to a B1 level, which is a good conversational level. This is something you can take, I believe, from the first semester that you start, but again, it might be a good idea not to overload yourself. You'll be picking up a bit of Dutch here and there at that point, because if you're putting too much on your plate and those credits start to become affected, and it could just be a combination of leaving home for the first time, doing your own laundry, maybe for the first time shopping, balancing a budget. It's really up to you, but these courses are available throughout your university study.
Sorry.
Libraries and study areas. It really shocked me when I first arrived working at the university, just what a hub the main library is. It's called the UB, which is UB in English, which means Universiteit Bibliotheek. And it really is where everybody is, especially in the build up to exams, which happen every 10 weeks. There's so much available in the library, but it's also a social hub. It's also sort of, and brings people together in order to kind of create a study mindset. Yeah, absolutely the center of the student city during exam period, and also the faculties all have their own specialized study areas and libraries as well. Yeah, sports. I think this is brilliant. For under 60 euros, you've got access to so much sport and exercise classes and other types of fitness and well-being through what we call the ACLO, which has 2 locations in Zernike, which is where our business and science programs are taught, a high-tech campus about 15 minutes bicycle ride from the city centre. We also have a smaller sports facility at the central train station. So yeah, when you think gym membership, yeah, can cost 30 euros a month, but then you can have access for just under 60 euros a year to all sorts of university or student-based facilities. It's a real winner with our students. Yeah, accommodation. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail at the moment, but this is something that will be, if you do apply to any Dutch university, it will become very apparent. We don't have a sort of a halls of residence like in the UK or like dorms in America where you are booked through the university itself. We do have a lot of student housing all over the city. Most first year students opt for the short stay housing, which is SSH XL. We have about 1,500 plus rooms reserved for our students, but they do go fast. So the advice always is, if you want to choose one of those rooms, apply literally on the day that the accommodation opens. So normally beginning of May, maybe earlier, but you will be completely, fully brought up to date with all of these things. And I think the same will apply for other Dutch universities as well. After your first year, you'll have friends, you'll be a lot more savvy, be a lot more aware with the situation in the city, and we'll have know when rooms are becoming available, or maybe find a couple of other friends and rent a nice apartment. So there's a lot of private opportunities and scope all around the city. So yeah, but just in that first year in your application phase, it's always important to be on top of housing. Prices vary from location. They can vary size and facilities, but also the closer you get to the 1st of September, the prices can also go up as well. So just be on time.
Sorry, I'm just scrolling.
I think this is one of the final slides. So international student life. Yeah, we have the Erasmus Student Network, which are really focused on social activities. They have great social weeks and introduction periods, going to different bars, clubs, experiencing different parts of the city, building friendship groups. International student associations, I don't think there's a UK one, but I know that specific ones for China, India, Indonesia, Latin America, Turkey. There's also, I think now, an African student society where people can really come together, especially to ease things like homesickness, or maybe cook traditionally, or just speaking in your own language for a bit. And then study societies as well. So there will be societies for all the faculties, and even some specific programs have their own study society, which gives you extra opportunities within the framework of your study or your field of interest. So, yeah, meet us. Well, I would normally say that we'll be coming to visit your school, or that you can come to see us at a fair, or come to a physical open day, get on a plane and fly to Groningen or Amsterdam and come to. Those things are not happening at the moment. So you can really check us out on our social media. Open days are definitely online until at least January, until at least the end of January 2021. That in itself actually can be quite beneficial, because a lot of people don't always feel that they can come from overseas, or the costs of traveling as a family to see a couple of open days, or even the inconvenience of having to take, various amount of days off. So try an online open day, because you can actually maybe for the first time experience even more about a university. Campus tours are now online. They can be arranged on a one-to-one basis with our international student team. Webinars like this, but also check out the university webinar page, because you may see webinars about specific programs or other things that you can get more information about. And web classes will begin again in the new academic year, which gives you an opportunity to sample a part of a program that you may be interested in applying to, and they're all free of charge. And that was it, I believe.
That is indeed it. Okay, right. Well, I'll stop the sharing then, and I will just see where we're at in terms of questions and so on. Okay. I'm not seeing any questions that people are asking at the moment, but please feel free now to post any that you might have, and we'll do what we can to try and answer anything there is that you specifically want to know about. I will just say, before we get, well, as we're waiting for some questions to come in, typically the ones we've received on the previous webinars have all been very much related to entry requirements and how to apply and things like that. A couple of general points that I will address. The first one is that the application process is different from the UK, completely separate from what's going on in the UK. So there's no problem for you to apply both here and abroad. This is absolutely fine. The Dutch do have a system that's called StudyLink, and ordinarily you can apply to up to 4 different courses through that. There are some exceptions for some really popular subjects where it can be a little bit, well, it can be limited. It might be you can only apply to 1 or 2. But generally speaking, it's quite straightforward to apply to a Dutch university. People do sort of imagine it's going to be hugely complicated. It usually is not. But having said that, our very first question that's come in is about an element of that. Does the university require a motivation letter or a personal statement, and how is it formatted? Is that something you'd like to comment on at all, Naomi?
Yes. Okay, so in most cases, our programs are pretty much open door. They have a 1st of May deadline, and we really are only looking at your high school, so your secondary school end level, which is 3 A levels. Like Mark said, there are some programs that have limited places because they are very, very popular, or they can only feasibly have so many people in the program. And in those cases, you will be asked to do additional things. So a motivational letter is often needed, maybe an additional online test or some kind of essay. But yeah, from University of Groningen's perspective, in most cases, we do not require a motivational letter.
I mean, if there is one that's asked for, and occasionally this does happen with some more selective programs. I've been doing this, 10 years now, dealing with Dutch universities. And this question that you always get in the UK, I know in the UK you have an insane amount of workshops on how to write a personal statement and all of that. This is just not part of the culture in the Netherlands at all. So anytime I've ever spoken to a Dutch university asking them, can you give me a template or a sample or something like that? The answer is always no, just write whatever is right for you. The one thing I will say about motivation letters, the one thing I have been able to establish is that they do tend to want to focus mostly on the course that you're applying to. So you want to write about what it is you think you'll be studying when you get there and where it is you might like it to take you later in life. It's not going to be like a list of all the things you've done while you've been at school, to the same extent as maybe a personal statement in the UK might be. But, you know, it's really, I mean, I'm splitting hairs. It's basically the same thing.
No, but indeed, I mean, if you're only listing your achievements, you're not listing anything motivational, are you? You're just, it's just a glorified CV. So yeah, Mark's right. Tell us about why you want to study, what value you think it will give you. And also show that you've done some research about the program, and also what you can bring to the program as well.
Right. Okay, Naomi, I'm just going to refer to some of the questions that come in on the Q&A, and I'm aware, I don't think you can see these. How would you go about applying to Groningen? Is it different from UK universities or similar? I think I've largely addressed that one. I mentioned this thing called StudyLink, but always I would suggest first and foremost, you should go to the university's website, because they will explain to you how to deal with StudyLink and all the rest of it, so they can help you through that process. Anything you want to add there? Are you adding? You typing away?
Yeah, no, I've just put the email, the website for StudyLink in there.
Right. Okay. Right. So we'll stick that into that.
I've got it wrong. Hang on. It's NL, not UK. Silly me.
I mean,
I'll put it in chat. I'm
put it in the chat. Put it in the chat with the NL. Okay. This is a very Groningen question. What campus is biology taught at? I can answer that. Zenica. Is it in the blue building up there with all the other sciences, or is that just physics and chemistry?
I don't know. I don't know. It's sprawling. Every year there's a new building built to house one of the programs. But yeah, it's part of our Faculty of Science and Engineering, and it's at our Zenica campus. Yeah,
absolutely, and it's a beautiful building up there. I mean, very good for the sciences. Sorry, I dismissed all that. So, the application deadlines generally around May. It's worth spending a moment talking about this because the deadline is usually the 1st of May. Fair enough, this year things moved and they went to the 1st of June. That is entirely coronavirus related. So we'll probably flip straight back to normal next year. The exceptions to this are those programs where where there is what's called numerous fixes. And we haven't really addressed numerous fixes at all so far. Basically, entry requirements for Dutch universities are generally, as we pointed out in Naomi and my presentation, quite straightforward. You've got 3 A levels, you can come in. Doesn't matter if it's A's, B's, or C's, or D's, or E's. You can come in. Sometimes they might ask for, maths if you're doing a maths or physics degree, but even so, it's going to be 3 E's. Don't, whatever you do, think that that's sensible. There are some degrees where that is different and where it is selective. And these are what's called programs that are subject to numerous fixes. Now, that means there's a limit on the number of students they can accept, which means they have a different application process, one that is more time consuming, which means that there is an earlier deadline of January 15th. So if you're applying to medicine, psychology, international relations, business, artificial intelligence, I think that's all from a Groningen perspective, those programs have an earlier deadline. But literally, if you're going to ask me what grades do I need to get into history, what grades do I need for economics, what grades do I need for physics, the answer is always the same. 3 A levels, grades not important. But please, I can't say this enough times, 3 Bs. If you're aiming for if you're going to get below 3 Bs, it's not sensible. Okay. I guess this so that kind of answers the deadline one. Science and engineering campus separate. Does it have its own library, and how far away is it from the centre? Naomi, I have no idea where the science and engineering library is.
Yeah, most faculties have their own, like I said, libraries and study facilities, labs. You know, I mean, the different faculties require different academic facilities. And the Zenica campus is about 12 minutes. Well, once you're used to riding a bike, about 12-15 minutes from the city centre. There's also a bus from Central Station, which takes about 15 minutes, and they run every 5, 6, 7 minutes in peak times. So it really is it's not like you're traveling from one side of a city to another and it's going to take you an hour a day. It really still is pretty much on your doorstep if you're living in the city centre.
I mean, I've done that bus ride and I've done that bike ride many, many times. You're going to be wanting to bike it, even if you think, no, I'm never going to get into cycling. Within weeks, you will be wanting to do that. It's far more convenient than the bus. But having said that, the bus is not. It's not a drama. It really isn't. So, you know.
No, the bus is, though, very well used by our Dutch students who come from all over, the north of the Netherlands. So they get training from Zwolle, and then the hassle of having a bike that you have to put away 2, 3, 4 times a day. So then they just nip on the bus with their free travel.
Okay. We've got a few sort of different questions that are all coming in a similar kind of area. The first one I want to address is just somebody asking about the International Baccalaureate. Obviously, I've covered quite in detail the fact that you need you need 3 E's. You correspond that to the International Baccalaureate, you need 24. You need to pass it. Okay, you've got to have the full diploma. If you've got a few certificate subjects but you haven't got the diploma, it's worthless. But as long as you've got the full diploma, you should be fine. Again, it depends what you're applying for. Science is if you want to see maths and physics at higher levels, maybe.
Yes.
Also, you know,
Yes.
the use, what's it called? The applications and analyses standard level can occasionally be.
Yeah, keep an eye on the maths requirements. That's very important, and the combinations. Unfortunately, there are a couple of our programs, biology and medicine being two that spring to mind immediately, which cause IB students and A-level students a lot of problems because we require a combination of subjects you can't do. You can't do all 3 sciences and maths.
Right.
So keep a very clear eye. So it won't be the grades that will be the problem per se. It will be the combination of subjects. Something like history, international relations, then the combinations are not as important. One other exception would be the liberal arts and sciences. So the University College requires, I believe, a minimum of 30.
I've seen people get in with around 32, 33, but I haven't seen people get in with below that for the University College. But those, I mean, again, the selective subjects, you know, I don't know what you'd be looking for on international relations, for example, probably a bit higher. You're not going to get in with 24 on that, I don't think. But for most degree programs, absolutely.
No, I think you do. I think if there isn't a specification, technically you could, but remember that there's a selection process for international relations.
So you might find yourself being weeded out by that.
Yeah.
We've now got a couple of different questions, which are both, how can I put this, Brexit related in citizenship. I have a French passport and French citizenship, but my education has been in England. I have dual citizenship. Do I qualify as an EU student? Yes.
You certainly do. Yes.
The simple answer to that is yes. Do not, under any circumstances, apply to a Dutch university using your British passport. If you can possibly avoid it, do. Nobody cares where you live right now. Okay, so it's your nationality that counts far more than your residency right now. Where you are is only really important in terms of them being understanding as to which school certificate you have and which system you are used to. Even if you're French and educated in the UK, you won't have to do language tests because you'll have had your education in English and stuff like that. But generally speaking, you're guaranteed to be paying EU fees if you are French. You are not guaranteed to be paying EU fees if you are British and starting later than December this year. So it's just too much of a risk. Another question on that similar area, this is actually for somebody in the UK with a Dutch passport. Does this affect anything? Yes.
Yeah, if it actually, it gives you an immediate relief that apply with your Dutch passport and you will be considered not even an EU student, you'll actually be considered a Dutch student, which actually then gives understandably more access to additional finance, which home students will always get. Like UK home students are always eligible for different types of financing than if you're an international student.
I'm just on that financing point.
Make sure you apply on your Dutch passport.
Yeah, don't change your mind afterwards. Stick with what you're going to go with throughout, otherwise you're creating an administrative headache, okay? So the other thing I would add on that is that from a funding point of view, because the next questions we're going to come up about are related to finance, if you are an EU citizen, the basic rule is that if you study in the Netherlands on a recognized Dutch degree, which in the case of Groningen is always going to be true, and if you live in the Netherlands, which again in the case of Groningen is also always going to be true, then you can get a loan to cover your tuition fees.
Yeah. And bear in mind the tuition fees are around €2,000. You have to pay them. And then what the Dutch government do is they give you, once you've applied, they give you the payments back in monthly installments. It's
completely different from what you might be used to here in the UK. So if you're expecting student finance in the Netherlands to work the same way, it just doesn't. Usually what happens there is you'll end up having to pay the fees out of your own pocket, but then be reimbursed on a monthly basis. Whereas here, you never see that money. It goes directly to the university and you are just this thing through which this transaction happens. In the Dutch system, you are far more responsible, shall we say, are involved in that process. Funding for living costs comes up time and again. For those of you with a Dutch passport, as Naomi pointed out, you can get a loan to cover this. If you don't have a Dutch passport, you cannot. Okay, so it's as simple as that. There is one loophole there. It's not one that I recommend. It's not one that I'm going to go into in any great detail. There is a loophole whereby you can claim loans for living costs, but it depends on you working 56 hours a month, 12 months a year in a job that's recognized and all the rest of it, and you're registered with the tax authorities and everything. You might get to a point after you've been living there a couple of years where you can do this, but to go there imagining it's going to happen on day one, just don't. You've got far more important things to do. If you're going there to study, you've got far more important things to do.
But I also want to put in, I mean, yeah, I've in the past, I've known a few students who managed to do that, but actually committing to a 56-hour per week job is a lot while you're studying as well. But there are part-time jobs in the city, some within the university, but also all over the city. Regular things like delivering food, working in bars, but also teaching assistants, maybe from your second year, student assistants in things like my office. So yeah, look out in the careers service, which is based next to the Academy building. We'll have a list of jobs that it receives every day, positions that are opening up.
Right. Next two questions are both related to scholarships for EU students. The short answer to that is no. Not at all. It's cheap. So you're going to get a loan if you need it. You don't have to take this loan, by the way. You can pay your €2,000 up front if you want to. There's no harm in doing that. So you could go through entirely debt-free if you can afford it. But because it's so cost-effective, let's put it that way, there are no scholarships available. It's as simple as that. Now, for non-EU students, which Brits might be in 2021, yes and no. Scholarships exist, but are you going to get one as a lowly bachelor's student?
No, we actually, from our university, we don't offer any bachelor's scholarships. Our scholarships are based almost entirely with our masters and postgraduate positions. They're normally, often there's very strict criteria where they're awarded, so it could be developing nations have priority. And there's also very, very few scholarships that are full scholarships. So most things will be a contribution towards your fees, or maybe a contribution towards your living costs, maybe for a limited period of your studies. So no, for a bachelor student coming from the UK, highly, highly unlikely that the university itself will be able to offer anything like that.
Okay, and I've been asked from my experience, how do British students finance studying in the Netherlands? With past students, look, family involvement. It's one of those things. It is cheaper to study in the Netherlands pre-Brexit, depending. I can give you as many charts and illustrations of this as you like. A 3-year degree in the Netherlands will cost you roughly £30,000. 3-year degree in the UK will cost you roughly £60,000. Okay, there's exceptions there, but it's real money by and large, beyond the fees. So what we will find is that you'll be able to get, I mean, look, it's one of those things where when you look at it and you look at the entirety of the living costs, and as Naomi pointed out, they're around 800,000 euro, whatever they happen to be. It's not nothing, but it's entirely possible, particularly in a big student city, you'll be able to get a part-time job to mitigate that. But it's not possible that you're going to really get a job that's going to be able to fund all of that and give you access to a loan. That's just too much. So usually in our experience, I have to say, you know, family support, something like that is going to, it's going to come into it. There's no question about that.
Yeah, and certainly within the first year, with the first period of the study, when yeah. So there are part-time jobs are very, very feasible. Also, summer work in the city, but in order to get yourself in there, yeah, you would need to be able to guarantee that all those bills can be paid upfront.
I would say don't even contemplate going if you haven't got at least the first semester's cash in full in your bank before you set off. Over time, you will begin to be able to manage it. Things will get a little bit different. But from day one, if your number one stress is money on the first day that you arrive, it's not going to be a pleasant experience. And unfortunately, you know, we can give you as much information as you need, but what we can't give you is any, you know, money. It's as simple as that from our own resources. Okay, there are a few very specific ones I will address, but I just want to kind of go through and see if there's anything more general on here. My Irish citizenship has been in process for over a year, but is now delayed due to coronavirus. I'm hearing this a lot, actually. I was having this conversation about somebody with Polish citizenship the other day. Bit worried I won't be able to get it before applications. Is there any leeway with this? Look, we're in June. Depending on the course you're looking to apply for, it might be May before you actually even submit an application. 11 months, even with coronavirus, ought to be enough to get this resolved. So I wouldn't be in a place where I'm panicking right now. If there's no improvement around this process, say around October time, then it might be worthwhile having a conversation about that, particularly if you're looking for a numerous fixes program where the deadline is January. Otherwise, you can let it slide a little bit longer than that as well. But I mean, I just know the complications involved in changing a nationality once you're in the system. I think there would be a great deal of understanding for the situation in which you find yourself, don't get me wrong. Is that going to cause you a few admin headaches? It potentially could. Naomi, do you have anything you'd add on that?
I think it's always very strongly advisable, like Marcus said, to apply under the nationality that you wish to be attributed. So with all the Brexit scenarios going on, that would be an EU nationality. I understand my daughter also took 18 months for her Irish citizenship and passport to come through, and that was pre-corona time. So this is a very slow process. What I can do, I will give you my email and I will ask our admissions office if they've got anything, because it won't just be Irish passports or Irish nationals, it will be UK people being able to access other nationalities maybe during their studies or even after they begin. So I would like to find out how possible that is, or whether you have to wait till the next academic year before that would kick in. So yeah, can I put my email in the chat, and then you can contact me and I can forward on and stay in touch with you in the coming weeks, because some of these scenarios may not have even been completely defined yet. And then there still is the possibility of the UK agreeing something with the EU that clears all this up in a successful way once and for all.
Okay. The next question actually is, again, tying back into this EU thing. And I just want to be doubly clear on this, okay? Whereas, would it be easier to apply under a UK passport? Would they be the same in terms of same in terms of fees? This is the point. For 2020, the answer to that is it makes no difference, okay? And if you apply in 2020 and you start this year, then your rights will continue forever. The Dutch government has come out and said that. However, everything changes as things stand on 1st of January 2021. So unfortunately, the reality is, unless something changes, we're going to leave, well, say we've left, we're going to leave the transition state on effectively 1st of January next year. And at that moment, we become as related to Dutch people as they are to Mongolians or Paraguayans or whatever you want to say, which means we will be paying full international fees unless something else is negotiated. There is no kind of third way through this at the moment. It's not really a high priority in negotiations. I haven't seen a thing on this since Boris Johnson's been Prime Minister, but when Theresa May was, the withdrawal agreement that she produced very much suggested we're going to go to full international fees for EU students coming to the UK. And the obvious result of that is the EU is going to go to full international fees for Brits going in the other direction. So if you're applying in 2021, if you can possibly avoid applying with a British passport and you've got another EU passport, I mean, it's not going to work if you're Canadian or whatever, do so. Okay. But, you know, I appreciate that's glib and not something that, you know, is going to be helpful to a lot of people. But the reality is, watch this space. All I can tell you for sure is that we will know before you have to apply. So you're not going to get into a situation, I mean, it's been going on 4 years, but if it continues, if we leave, you're going to know before you actually have to fill in an application. So, you know, we just have to wait and see. Honestly, that's all I can say there. It's an unfortunate consequence, and unfortunately 2021 students, people who are going to start in that year, are the ones who are going to feel it for the first time. So.
I also just want to sort of stress a little bit that please, just because of the Brexit situation and how that will eventually, maybe quite soon, impact, don't write off the opportunity of studying abroad. Students make a considered, maybe a considered look. Don't be put off if it's feasible to finance it, because it still won't cost more than studying in the UK. You just won't necessarily be able to access expensive financing that you can do in the UK. So it would be a case of having to be able to fund the program directly. But don't write off international opportunities for education completely, because I think that would be a really sad thing to come from this.
Right. Next question is one that I think we've, well, you've half addressed it already, Naomi. If I was to study in the Netherlands and then do a master's in the UK, are the bachelors transferable between the countries? I'm going to have my say here first, and then I'm sure Naomi will have her own version of this. The answer to this is yes, absolutely. You won't have any trouble at all. I mean, British universities tend to be a lot more flexible in terms of allowing you to do a master's degree in something that wasn't necessarily 100% what you studied during your bachelor's degree. So I wouldn't envisage any problems there at all. In fact, we've even got examples of people who've been to universities of applied sciences who've been able to get directly into master's programs at like King's College London or something like that. You try and do that from a University of Applied Sciences to University of Groningen, there's an extra year at least before you can do that. So in some respects, that is really not going to be an issue. I will just briefly address this the other way around. If you do a bachelor's in the UK and then do a master's in the Netherlands, generally the master's degrees in the Netherlands do require you to have a certain amount of content in your degree that is directly related to what you studied at bachelor level that you intend to go on at master's. Usually, I think the benchmark is kind of around 60% of what you do in your bachelor's should be relevant towards the master's degree that you're going to go on to. And that can sometimes actually be a little bit harder than doing your bachelor's in the Netherlands and coming back to the UK afterwards. It can sometimes be harder to go the other way. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think in the majority of the cases, it's because it's what Mark says. Actually, bringing a Dutch research university or even applied science back to the UK will open more doors than if you brought a UK bachelor to the Netherlands, unless, and this is often the case, unless you're doing a very linear progression. So if you studied psychology at a British university and you want to do psychology masters or a master, then it's normally fine. It's when you want to sort of jump around a little bit, then it's either very difficult or require a pre-master or is going to be impossible. But even the transition of some economics or business degrees require a pre-master, because we will look at your transcripts and it could be that the courses that you did in the UK are not the right ones to bring you into a master's in the Netherlands. But taking a Dutch research or University of Applied Sciences bachelor back to the UK is never normally a problem, as long as you're staying somewhere within the field of interest. I don't think you could bring a Dutch history bachelor back and then do I don't know, neurophysics or something. But I mean, staying in the area.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, common sense comes into that argument at some point.
Yeah, but also just to stress as well that these are world-class universities that we're talking about in the Netherlands, the research universities. So their bachelor programs and their master's programs are fully internationally recognized. Yeah.
Very quick one. I just want to address very quickly, because this has been asked about student in Thailand studying in an international school in English. Will I still be required to undergo the English proficiency tests? Well, I'm assuming that if you're studying the A-levels or IB, that's going to be okay. I don't think there'd be any requirement. If your secondary education has been in English, you should be all right, yeah?
Yeah, if your secondary education is fully in English and A-levels and IB will be examples of those, then you're exempt from an English proficiency test. If you are at an international school learning your international baccalaureate in French, then you would need one. But I think that you have pointed out that you're in English. So if we understand that correctly, no problem.
Yeah, as long as you're actually studying in English and it's an English qualification, you're going to be fine. Okay.
And if you're doing IB, do the full IB, like Mark said. Don't just stop at the certificates. Do the full IB, because only that will be admissible for a research university.
Okay, well, the questions we've got remaining, a lot of them are now very, very specific, which I will come to. I'm going to answer everybody's question, but what I'm going to do is just kind of go with the most general ones first, you know, to apply to the most widest range of people. And the most general question we've got on here now is, what types of accommodation are there out there at Dutch universities? Naomi's already pointed out it's different from here in the UK. The idea that you're going to get like a fully catered halls of residence type thing where you're all, you know, living in the same place and being fed in a communal area or whatever, doesn't quite happen to the same extent. There are one or two private providers who are like the private providers here, you might see, but you're probably already aware those are quite expensive options, but there are a growing number of those. The one general point I'd make about student accommodation in the Netherlands is not really about the accommodation itself. It's more about what's going to be expected of you. Generally speaking, most places are self-catering. You're going to be feeding yourself, looking after yourself to a greater or lesser extent than you might be here in the UK. The only really exception to that, where you have a proper residential experience, if you like, would be the university colleges, these liberal arts and sciences programs, where that might be slightly different. But generally speaking, you know, it's going to be different. It will feel a little bit different, but it is still one of the main ways that you meet your student, your fellow friends and all the rest of it, and you make friends. It's the same there as it is here. When you go into the private sector, you're going to find things are a little bit weird when you're starting to rent rooms in the second year and stuff like that, in terms of comparing it with the UK, but nothing that you can't get your head around. Anything from you on that, Naomi?
Yeah, I didn't find the second year transition much more different to the one in the UK that I experienced myself, because you get your friends together, you find a house that traditionally students have left or vacating, and then you pick it up from them for the following year. And contracts and things tend to work fairly similar as well. So you normally have to give your landlord a month's deposit or some kind of administration fee, and then you pay your rent monthly. And just make sure that you get an English version of the contract and run through it thoroughly, you know, so how much notice you have to give to leave. But I found the transition from first to second year quite similar to the UK, but that was from my experience.
Okay. Question about money again. I'm just saying this one now. Are there student loans in the Netherlands for non-EU citizens? Quite simple answer to that, no. It's only if you're EU. If you're non-EU, there's no financial aid available to you. And as Naomi has pointed out, specifically for bachelor's degrees, there are not really any scholarship options there either. Pretty much, you're going to have to fund that one yourself. I think that's it. But again, you know, when you compare the costs of an international education in the UK, an international education in the Netherlands, or heaven forbid, Australia or the US, the Netherlands wins hands down in terms of the overall amount of money required. But, you know, it is money that you are going to have to find rather than, you know, money that's necessarily, you know, going to come to you through loans. Right.
I see that we're already running over time. So how many more questions do we have? Maybe we should
I've got
on the questions.
I've got 4 here. I'm just going to Can you see them, Naomi, or not?
In the Q&A, or are you in
Yeah, in the
comment?
Q&A.
And I think there's one or two, there's another one in the comments still.
They're
Okay,
usually
yeah,
dupes. They're usually dupes. Don't worry about it. I think I've got everything in the Q&A as well. All right. These are just very specific questions. There's one about geography, looking to work out whether or not you need maths. I've got this document here, and there is a page on the website which says that for human
Spatial
geography,
science.
you need AS level maths. Now, obviously, AS level maths doesn't really exist in the UK anymore. For the actual spatial planning degree, you're going to need A-level maths. So I think the answer to that is yes, you're going to need some kind of maths over and above GCSE on that one. There is a page on the website which might be a little bit more up to date than the information in here because this is a year old now.
Yeah, I will put that into chat, okay?
Sorry? You're going to put that in chat?
Website. Yeah.
Okay, so the answer to that question will, well, the place to go to get that answer will appear in chat in one moment. But it is what it is. You can't get around that. There are exams you can do in the Netherlands to get away from that, but it's not something you can avoid. English taught programs in built environment in the Netherlands, such as architecture or civil engineering. Do we have any suggestions? Yes, I do. There are a handful. What I would say about architecture is that the options that are taught in English tend to be much more on the engineering rather than, say, the artistic side. So maths and physics, prerequisites. But have a look at places like Delft, University of Technology, and Eindhoven, I think. I think both of those have architecture programs in English. Civil engineering, I believe the University of Twente has one there as well. Built environment, it depends what you mean by that. If you're talking about spatial sciences, the University of Groningen has that. So that could be something to look at. And again, built environment and urban development, if you're talking about sort of Dutch, town planning and stuff like that, then Breda University of Applied Sciences would be an excellent choice for that. I will send you a few, I'll write a few sort of names for you to research on that while yeah, I'll probably send you a more fuller answer on this once I get off here because I don't want to keep people online while we're answering general questions. Is there a difference between degrees taught in Dutch and English? I used to speak fluent Dutch and plan on going to university in 2022. Should I start brushing up my Dutch? There's no, I mean, look, there's a difference in terms of the range of things on offer. Certainly there are still more bachelor's degrees, I think, taught in Dutch than there are in English, but, in certain subjects, depending on what you want to do, you're going to have to study in Dutch. I mean, if you want to do dentistry, for example, you're going to have to study in Dutch. There's no two ways about it. But I would say roughly whatever you're confident with. I don't see any difference. Certainly, if you're asking me from a quality point of view, I'm going to say there is no difference there. But in terms of a range of subjects point of view, yes, maybe. Are there any Spanish students at Dutch universities? Yes, absolutely.
Yes, plenty. Yes, very many. Yeah.
Yeah, and more. We are certainly finding this is a very, very live trend for us right now that Spanish students are, I don't want to say avoiding the UK, but voting to expand their horizons a little bit and looking at.
Yeah, and we see Spanish students increasingly in the full-time programs as well. So when I started working, Spanish students, we used to get a lot through exchange programs, quite understandably because of the connections between universities within Europe. But now we're seeing a lot of Spanish students in the full-time programs. That's bachelor's, master's, all sorts of subjects, a lot of PhDs, and also a lot of Spanish faculty staff as well, so teachers and so on. Right.
And one final question, which is a nice general broad one to end on, so hopefully relevant to everybody who's hung on to the bitter end here. What is student life like regarding societies, clubs, and general life? And this is a very good question because it is different from the UK. There's no denying that. The whole idea of a sort of a student union where everybody goes out drinking or whatever, and that's not really it, as far as I understand it. And again, I'm going to ask, Naomi's going to have far more to say on this than I will, I'm sure. But student life does tend, in as much as it revolves around societies, quite heavily political in some respects as well. There's a lot of political societies there. Clubs certainly in all sports. I don't know. What would you say? I know you touched on this briefly in your presentation, Naomi, but
it really does depend from the person to person to the group of friends. Culturally as well, it can be different from student to student. I mean, from my perspective with Groningen, Groningen is often called the best student city in the Netherlands, and that has a lot to do with the variety that's on offer. So if you like to go out, you know, often in the evening for big nights out, everything is there for you. If you are somebody that likes cultural activities, so music, theatre, that type of thing, that's all there. Yeah, and then you get the student groups that I touched on as well, about how different nationalities or different cultures tend to have their own groups, so they can get together and sort of, you know, do familiar things or do special things that they are aware of. We have a very diverse summer-winter culture. In the summer, there is so much going on for festivals, music events. We have a lot of public holidays in the summer, like our King's Day. In the winter, people are a lot more cozy, sort of at home, enjoying themselves, and maybe, but the bars are open the whole time. We have so many clubs. I'm on my bicycle most of the time, unless we have, I don't know, most of the time. So everybody is really accessible. Dutch are very sort of, not, I wouldn't say fitness obsessed, but they're very outdoorsy people. So going outdoors, cycling to the lakes that we have, a lot of excursions. Yeah, at the moment, I mean, this has also been a funny time of year, having the most brilliant April and May on record, and most people staying in their houses, which was very, very unusual. So yeah, student life is what you want it to be, and it's very, very varied, and you'll definitely not be bored.
Wonderful. Right, we have answered now 21 at least questions, and that was all that you came up with. So I'm absolutely happy to have done that. Hopefully you all got something useful out of this session. Do please feel free to get in touch with both me or Naomi by email if there's any follow-up you want to do. Obviously, at some point in the next few days, I'll get around to emailing you out a link to various resources that we've referred to here. But yeah, thanks for joining us. And yes, that's I think we'll wrap up there. So thanks,
Yeah,
Naomi.
that's great. Thanks. It was lovely to answer your questions and be able to present a bit about the university in the Netherlands to you. Thanks for coming.
Okay, thanks very much. Goodbye.
Bye.
Okay, I've just. Oh.